And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host and author, Sara DiVello, and I am so excited to welcome screenwriter and author Aaron Philip Clarke back to get the latest scoop on his new book, The Bluest Night, #3, in his detective turned private investigator series. Aaron, welcome back. Tell us about this book.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure. Well, this is the third Trevor Finnegan book. It centers on a missing person, so it's a little bit different than my other books. In this case, it's very close to home because Trevor's half-brother, his newly discovered half-brother, goes missing along with the brother's girlfriend in Malibu. And so that sends Trevor on this quest with his father to figure out what happened, where they are, what's going on. And they ultimately discover his brother, but also discover that the girlfriend is a homicide victim, that she ultimately is found dead in a canyon in Malibu. And essentially, Trevor is forced to, he's not too sure about the brother. He doesn't know him, but he's forced to align with his father, who is convinced that there is no way that he, a child of his, could do such a thing. But the suspicion does fall on his newly discovered half brother, and together he and his father Shaun, it's a bit of a team up, and they are on the quest to figure out what happened. And that brings us to a very, very disturbing and haunting group of characters who are doing something horrible in Malibu. Not to give too much away, but it is a dastardly, vile crimes that they ultimately have to confront, which will change Trevor forever.
Well, I'm very excited to get the scoop on The Bluest Night, book 3 in the Trevor Finnegan series, and to discuss the latest news. And there will be a book 4, so stay tuned, everyone. Now, if you've never been here before, you know, here's how you participate. Ask any questions that you have for Aaron about his writing process, his creative process, his characters, anything that you would like to know about. Get those going in the comments, no matter where you're watching from, and I will get those over to Aaron. And if you've been here before, you know the drill, and we're going to jump right in. Now, Aaron, we had some questions submitted in advance, and I have some questions myself. So let's dive right in to your creative process. You are both a screenwriter and obviously a book writer. So tell us about, if we were all flies on your wall, what would we see in your daily writing process? Are you a Walter Mosley? You're at your desk, you're writing 3 hours a day before you can do anything else? Are you more of a creative, go with the flow kind of guy? Tell us about that. And is it different for screenwriting versus book writing?
Yeah, so, I marvel at what Walter could do. So I wish that I had the ability to be able to have those time blocks like that, but unfortunately that is not the case. I try to write every day. That is a goal. But I honestly do a lot of writing throughout the day. So I am a huge fan of these old school composition books. So my novels are actually primarily outlined in these books. And so each chapter, and so you can see here, it says Trevor Finnegan 4. Like, the whole book is going to be done in here. Now, I don't write the book in here, but I do extensive outlining in these composition books. And I go chapter by chapter, and I essentially might put a few lines of dialogue. And then I also put bullet points that let me know what that chapter has to cover. So when I come back to it, I'll know exactly what I was thinking.
So first of all, as I am all about that, the old school, I keep paper notebooks as well. And it was so interesting because I remember a couple of years ago, there was an article in New York Times that they did MRIs on people's brains as they both typed and as they handwrote. And even though they were writing about the same things, it lit up different parts of their brains. And I feel like, ooh, I want to tap into that creative part of my brain. So I love that you get that going. So, okay, once you do that, then are you transcribing what you wrote into a computer document, or that's just where you're doing your outline and your bullet points to get the skeleton sort of in your brain?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of both. So if I do, I may do a few lines of dialogue, and then that actually makes its way into the chapter. But for the most part, it's just to help me remember what I was supposed to be doing. So it's kind of like when I actually do get an opportunity to sit down at the computer, which normally is after 9. So I write from 9 p.m. to about 1 a.m. Because that's when the house is quiet. I can focus. So that's normally how my writing schedule goes. And then I'll look in my composition book and I'll say, oh, okay, this is what I was thinking. This is what I need to do. But it's more of a blueprint. So it becomes very organic once I actually start to sit down and write. So I'm not following it to the T, but it's more of almost creating mental bookmarks. So I know where I'm headed. And so, I do a lot of the work in the composition book simply for structure. And that makes sure that I in terms of plot and plot points, that I'm hitting those plot points.
So for this book, were you like, okay, Trevor is going to learn about this, about Avery, his newly discovered half brother, and let's not just make it a simple sibling reveal. Let's throw Avery into the deep end with him and his girlfriend Keisha missing, then Keisha turning up murdered, and Avery under the spotlight. Or were you like, okay, let's give him a half brother, and then you were surprised to know what's going on?
Well, so the reveal of his brother actually happens at the end of Blue Like Me, at the end of that book.
That's right. Okay, yeah. It's been a few years since you were here. Yeah. Avery appeared in Blue Like Me. Okay, yes.
Yeah, so
2022, that's right.
Yeah, his mother shows up and she's looking for Shaun, his Trevor's father, and Trevor is there selling his condo in Glendale, and she basically says, "Hey, I need to find, your father," but she doesn't know it's his father, but she needs to find Shaun because, hey, their kid is missing. And that's when Trevor learns, wait, I have a brother, And so in this situation, it actually picks up a few weeks after that. So that's when they realize that he's missing, and they go on the search to essentially find him. But, I just, in my mind, I thought, okay, that'll be fun, missing person. But I wasn't 100% sure where it was headed. But this book was really heavily, I guess, inspired, if that's even the right word, by the real case that happened in Malibu, Calabasas area, which was Matrice Richardson, who ultimately disappeared. And we're going on, 10 years, probably 10 years ago. But she disappeared in the area and was later found next to this canyon where someone was growing marijuana. And her case was never ruled a homicide. And so it's still kind of unclear as to what happened. And so I was really taken by that case, and I followed it really closely. And it just troubled me because there were all these sightings of her throughout Malibu. And then she goes to this particular diner. She doesn't have money. So there's this whole conversation about whether or not they should call the police. They end up calling the police, and then the sheriff department there come and get her. And then the last known image of her is walking with the sheriff deputy out to the parking lot after she had called her mother, and her mother said, "I can't come get you right now," and so that was it. And then later there's sightings of her in backyards and all this very odd things, and her walking on the side of the road, but no one stopped to help her. No one, reached out and said, "Hey, let me assist you." And so I have always kind of been interested in this notion of these very homogenous areas, these under-policed areas. And, it's ripe, it's perfect for someone who is committing crimes because no one is looking there. And so, over the years, there's been people who have disappeared from that area of Malibu because there's so many canyons, and it's frightening.
Yeah, because one of my favorite podcasts is To Live and Die in LA, which is about a journalist from Rolling Stone magazine. He's a music reviewer. He's not a true crime guy, but someone goes missing in one of those canyons, and he and his wife she gets obsessed with the case, and they just take this on and end up making a podcast about it. And I had no idea. I've never hiked those canyons. I don't, I live on the opposite side of the country. So this was absolutely fascinating to me, but I love knowing the truth about, the case that inspired you. And the idea that these safe areas, which are, under police, are indeed the perfect place for a crime to happen. Renee has a question. She wants to know, Aaron, is it important to read the first two books prior to reading this one? Great question, Renee.
No, they're really written as they function as standalones. So this, you could easily pick up, the Bluest Night. And I referenced things in the other books, but very much, I wrote these to exist on their own. And so, Trevor's reeling, from things that happened in the other books. I mean, he's definitely still having to emotionally deal with some of the choices he made in the first book. And then even in the second book, there's characters that appear, but by no means, you will get the gist very quickly of what's going on. You'll be able to navigate that story easily.
Thank you for that answer, Aaron. Creatively, I guess I'm wondering, that has got to be hard to plant those Easter eggs for your OGs, the people who have been reading since book one, but then to subtly introduce it to the new people without being like, hey, Trevor, remember that thing that happened?
Yeah.
Well, yes, I do. That was when, but how do you, but you don't want the new people who are joining you on Trevor book 3 to feel lost, but you don't want the people who have been with you since book 1 to be like, we know. How did you do that?
Well, yeah, that's when some screenwriting tricks come into play. So, so it's more about not necessarily having to reference everything that happened. But, if you ever watch a sequel to a movie, you don't necessarily need to see the first one. You're going to get either, and you don't want to do this, obviously, as thick exposition, very dense. But, in The Bluest Night, I simply have Trevor in a situation where he's waiting for, it opens with him waiting for the call from his father. And while he's waiting, he's replaying these things that happen, right? So I thought it's much better to do that visually, as much as you can. Like, he's literally laying on his bed and he's just waiting. It's that worst feeling, right? Where something horrible has happened and you feel it in your gut, but you don't have confirmation. And so he's laying there and he's just going through everything that led up to this moment. So it's more of something that is being revealed as part of his character, rather than just saying, hey, this is everything that happened up until this point. But no, it's through his POV, and it's revealing to the reader that he's processing. He's processing these past traumas, and then he's wondering, hey, do I need to gear up for another trauma here?
Thank you for that. Renee, I have not looked at a map of the canyons, and I should, because that would better help me to understand. Aaron, a great question. I was wondering as well, how many books do you plan on writing in this Trevor Finnegan series?
Yeah, so there's just going to be one more, as far as I'm concerned.
But you thought there were just going to be 3, Aaron.
That's true.
And now you're working on book 4. So we could be having the same conversation in 1 year.
You know what? You're right. I never say never, but in my mind, I think 4 is a solid number for Trevor Finnegan. I mean, he is a lightning rod for just, chaos and drama. And so, and I don't want it to be where he deals with so many of these cases. They're going to have an impact on him, right? And so I don't treat my characters really as characters. I treat them as literary humans. And I have to ask the question, how much can a human take? Like Jack Reacher is like beyond human. He can take so much. You know what I mean? Like, how many things could possibly happen to him? And I love Reacher, but I knew at the beginning of this, I didn't want to write that kind of character. I wanted to write someone who's very, very grounded, who is going to suffer the impact of taking a life, of finding people, bodies, of dealing with depravity. Like, that takes a toll on you psychologically. And so for Trevor, very much with this book and the next book is that I want him to have some happiness in his life. And it's going to come at a cost. Like the last book is going to be a doozy, but you know, I want him to be able to have his moment where he can ride off into the sunset with his family.
But you know what's interesting, Aaron, is I have also interviewed real life homicide detective turned FBI consultant turned writer Bruce Coffin.
Yeah,
and
oh yeah.
I talked to him and I said, you know, because he did that for his entire career. So did Isabella Maldonado and so many other of our fellow authors. And I asked Bruce, you know, how do you do that for your whole life and not let it get on you? And he's like, it does take a toll. The people who have been, you know, serving and protecting and dealing with dead bodies, and exactly as you just so perfectly and so concisely said, taking a life, you know, advocating for those whose lives have been taken, like it does take a toll on them. So I kind of love that you're protecting Trevor from that, and you're like, I'm not going to let this happen to you, buddy. Like you're not going to be scarred and scathed and turning to addiction or therapy.
Or, you know, and that's the thing. In the second book, you know, he has his therapist, you know, because that's realistic.
Yes, because he should. Yes.
So it's you know, you have to have somebody you could talk to. You know, you can't always bring that home to your spouse. So, you know, in Trevor's case, you know, I always remember Joseph Wambaugh did a great interview. I think it was at the University of San Diego, and he rarely did interviews, but he did this one. And I remember the interviewer was asking him that essential question, like, you know, how did you process this? And he was honest. He said, I don't spend a lot of time with people. I spend a lot of time with my dogs. And he had essentially lost some faith in people, you know, working that many years with LAPD, seeing what he saw, you know, at the very height of the crime, you know, era. It was like the 80s moving into the 90s. So, you know, for him, he was like, I don't engage, you know. And so he you know, he was like, I hang with my dogs and I write. That's my happy place. So, you know, thinking about Trevor, I wanted him not to, and he leaves LAPD, you know, before he ever has to experience that. So Trevor still is almost like protected a little bit. You know, he's seen dark things, but it's not to the point where he's spent, like his father, 20 years experiencing those things. And so in order for him not to end up like his father, who is a recovering alcoholic, you know, Trevor is going to take the path out and recognize. And so it's a very existential choice, because it's like, hey, I could either continue fighting on behalf of the victims, or I can go have a life. And I think that in this case, he's going to choose to have a life.
Thank you for that, Aaron. I love how you treat him with care and with respect. No, really, like you want him to have this life. And I love that. Robin, welcome to the conversation, saying hi, Sara and Aaron from dreary, rainy Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Welcome to the conversation, Robin. Always good to have you. John is joining us from Northeast Ohio. Hey, John. So good to have you as well. Aaron, so speaking of LAPD, I wanted to ask you about LA as we're going to get to the dog questions soon. Don't you worry, Renee, because I'm sitting right here with my best friend. The character about how LA is almost a character. It's more than a setting. Let's talk about that. Walter Mosley, his Easy Rollins series, you know, really, you know, centering on LA, the grit, and especially in the 70s and the grit and the history of LA. So fascinating. And I love that. Michael Connelly, also LA guy, LA coming to life under his hands. You as well. Tell us about that and how you bring LA to life on the page.
Yeah, you know what's fun about writing about a city like LA, and the fact that there are so many of us, like, you know, who write about LA, Rachel Houser Hall, Gary Phillips, you know, we all write about Los Angeles. But what's so fun is that our perspective on the city varies and some of it is generational, you know, but it's a different city for all of us. You know, it's like we're writing about the same city, but because of our perspective, because of our life experience, it's very different. So Trevor came up in the 90s, you know. He grew up grows up in the valleys. His father doesn't want him anywhere near really LA. So, you know, he grows up idolizing his father, even though his father is very problematic. But he also, because he doesn't have that LA experience, he questions his authenticity as an Angelino. And so that's something that he struggles with. So then his following in his father's footsteps and joining LAPD gives him some of that LA grit. He starts to really learn the city. And I wanted that to be very much of his character in the first book, of questions of identity. Well, who really belongs? So when I was in the academy, there was people from all over, people who literally traveled to LA to become, LAPD officers, which I always found very fascinating, because their experience with the city is completely different, because in some ways it's not their city. I had a good friend. He was from New York. And so he originally said, hey, I thought about joining NYPD, but he was like, then I thought how cold it's going to be. And he was like, no, he said, so he left. And he came to LA, but he had to really learn the city, because it's survival. You kind of got to know, the ins and outs. And the most effective officers, in my opinion, were ones who did that. And took the time to really know the city and get to know its history.
Right. Because when you are from that city, it's so well. And a city changes so quickly, street to street. That street is okay to walk down. This street is not. I go this far on the street, then I don't, it's like, and that you so deeply, you don't even think about it. I don't even think I can say it. That is so interesting. And when I was talking to Walter about his latest book, and he was talking about, he's been writing, for 30 years, and also has been writing about LA historically and how much LA has changed. And so Walter Mosley's Easy Rollins LA is different than Aaron Philip Clarke's LA, and different than Michael Connelly's LA, but also he's writing about a different period of history. Trevor is, he's younger than he's writing about a totally different time period than Easy. He exists in an LA that is more modern,
right,
than Easy's. LA, and how much the city has changed, how much time has changed. Oh my gosh. Yes. Renee saying, I like reading a book with the setting also being character. Me too. I want to immerse myself fully, not just in that city. I've been to LA many times, but in Trevor's city, which is Aaron's city, and I want to immerse myself in Walter Mosley's city, which is Easy Rollins' city version of LA. Because it's such a deeply experiential experience. Oh, thanks for all the hearts on Facebook, you guys. Yes, exactly. Okay, we need to know about the dogs. Robin is saying, wait a minute, what kinds of dogs, Aaron? Renee saying, wait a minute, do you live with dogs? What type? Okay, I'm sitting here with you. We all want to know about the dogs.
Well, no, so I actually do not have a dog. What's funny is my family has been considering getting
it's dog time.
Getting a dog. So I grew up with an Akita. And so we went to Japan, and it was so wonderful, to be able to see so many Akitas, because I just love them. So it is on our list. And in the next book, Trevor actually does get a dog. So
I know we're all appalled at the lack of dogs. We need to get a dog.
Well, he's gonna he in the next book, Trevor gets a dog. So it's I don't want to give a whole lot.
What kind of dog do you think he'll get?
It's either gonna be a lab, or it may be an Akita. I haven't decided yet.
I think you should get a rescue dog, because that's what I have.
Oh yeah. So we've in my life as a kid, we had multiple rescue dogs. We had a Chow.
Oh my god, the little black tongues are so cute.
Well, he was a Chow Lab mix. That they had the kennel had named him Jackson Brown, because when they found him, he was running on empty, and so. So he was but you know what, he did not like a lot of people. So I don't know what experience he had, but he loved us, but he was very, very protective of us. So he was a great dog. But so
I look forward to Trevor getting a dog. Chris, welcome to the conversation, saying Aaron's approach to his characters and treating them with such respect as literary humans. That is why we get so invested. We care so much about them. And that's what brings us back to reading his books. Chris, that is so beautifully said. Thank you so much. And it's so true. Aaron, let's talk about how you do that. How you create a character. We're reading a book. It's, an inanimate object. It's, pages from a dead tree, but we care about these people in this world. We care about Trevor. We care about Avery. We care about Keisha. We care about Shaun. We care about everybody in these pages. How do you do that? What do you think makes people care about a character?
Well, I think it's about, when I do a character breakdown, so it's one of those composition books, that's usually the very first page, and I'll take multiple approaches, but sometimes I'll start with a diary entry for the character. And I try and get as close as I can to what would this character put as a diary entry for this particular day. And for Trevor, it was, and it happens off the page in the next book, but he and Sara, ultimately his longtime love interest, they get married. And so I wrote a diary entry about the day that he decides to marry her and how he knows he can't bring the darkness that has been so part of his life to that relationship, right? Because that will essentially destroy it. So in his mind, he thinks he has to really protect it. And then I wrote another entry when he learns that she's pregnant. And so, how he kind of feels about becoming a father and how he wants to do it better than his dad, but, and so that's really, that then sets the tone for how he's going to behave in the book. And so that's very much the last book. That's where his mindset is.
So you're sitting there saying, "Dear diary, like I'm Trevor.
I write as Trevor." Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. I love that. I've kept diaries since I was 8 years old. I'm such a diary keeper. I love it. Okay, you guys, I want to remind you that the book is out now and you can order it from our favorite woman-owned independent bookstore. That is, of course, Murder by the Book. So whether you're watching with us on Facebook or YouTube, wherever you're watching from, we are live on 8 different destinations, including 2 private Facebook groups. You can order now and get your hands on The Bluest Night and support independent bookstores. So here is that link that you can order The Bluest Night and get your mitts on this book and find out what happens with Trevor and this investigation into Keisha's murder and all of the things that we're talking about, and we're revealing no spoilers so that you can enjoy them for yourself. And of course, Erin's writing has engendered such incredible reviews, praise from Publishers Weekly, Stephen Mac Jones, Eli Craner, so many more. I'll put them all in the comments so you can read them at your leisure. But Erin, we need to know about what the heck is going on with 50 Cent. Tell us all the things. Tell us all the things.
50's always busy. So anyone who's been looking at Netflix lately.
Oh my God. Not only is he busy on Netflix, but everyone is trending as a grudge keeper myself, we're like, this man is teaching a masterclass and I am so here for it. Yeah. These are my goals. Yeah. Tell us everything.
Look, I mean, he's on a different level, but we were able to,
oh my God, we have a lot of Eli Craner fans here
he's great
in the house. Okay, cool. Yeah,
very awesome.
Okay, we need to know.
But yeah, we worked together on the book The Accomplice. So it was a really fun collaborative experience. And so, 50 he's a storyteller. And I think that he really loves story. And I've done different collaborations with other folks, but I would say that what differs with 50 is that he already comes to the table with so much energy regarding the story. And so the early conversations we had, he loves heist related stories. He was in the movie Den of Thieves, and we had a big conversation about Heat. And so, and I love Michael Mann. He's one of my favorite directors, and I love Heat. But one of the things we talked about was how incredibly hard it is to move money. And so, the shootout scene, I mean, they have assault weapons. They're running around with duffel bags of money. Money is incredibly heavy. It's like carrying bricks, right? So we were saying, love the movie, but that scene is not grounded in reality, right?
No.
And so one of the conversations, or at a point in the conversation, we said, I was moving away from this notion of having to move money, having to use a team, the cliche stuff. There's always going to be somebody on the team who's going to double cross somebody and try and take everything, and like, it was just overdone, right? It's very tired. And so I pitched to him. I said, well, what if we're not talking about moving money? What's more valuable than money? And that's secrets, because people who want to keep their secrets hidden will pay lots of money. And that's a lot easier to collect on than having to rob a bank or do something like that. And so, 50 was kind of quiet for a minute. So I said, oh, maybe he didn't like this. And so he said, no, I like that. I like that. So I said, okay, cool. So, that's the route that we went. And that kind of birthed The Accomplice. And he was very clear he wanted a female protagonist. We originally were thinking about making it in LA, but then we said, it'd be interesting to make it Texas. And so that's when I said, this would be really fun if I approach it as a modern Western. And that's essentially, the character. She's basically comes into town, a little bit of a fish out of water, but she's a Texas Ranger. She's the first Black female Texas Ranger. And she, she's kind of put on a case that shouldn't be as big as it is, but then it starts to kind of unravel, and she realizes, like, oh, this is huge. And so, it's very much, it's very much Nia Adams versus Desmond, who's this thief. And so I alternate, POVs throughout the book. And then they kind of converge a little bit and ultimately have to work together.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. I am totally here for this. Yes.
Well, it's going to be a TV show, so.
Oh my God, Aaron, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. This is so freaking exciting. Oh my God. Okay. We don't have a date or anything, right?
We don't have a date. So, it's with Peacock. And so Nia Adams' character will be played by Taraji P. Henson, who I think is going to absolutely embody that. She'll embody that character. I think it's going to be really, really fun.
Oh my God, she was so amazing in Hidden Figures and in everything that she does. I am obsessed with her. Oh, this is so exciting. Renee, this is going to be on Peacock. So this is very exciting. Oh my gosh. Robin is saying, listen, diamonds weigh less. Just
that's true.
Not as light as secrets, Robin, but good point. I know. I started thinking, I'm like, I don't know how heavy money is. Oh, we all love her. Yes, she's so great. Oh my God, she's going to be so brilliant in this. I'm so excited. I can't stand it. Oh my God. Well, Aaron, we cannot wait for the TV show, and we cannot wait for Trevor Finnegan book 4, which you've just heard, everybody, is going to be a book 4. So, Aaron, you don't have a date on that, do you?
No date on that so far. So it'll likely be winter or fall, I'm thinking.
Okay. Because I went back to check my records. You haven't been here since 2022. So 3 years. You were here for the first 2 in Trevor. So as soon as Trevor book 4 drops, now that you've let us know first that there will be book 4, we got to have you back for.
Oh, definitely. Would love to come back.
Oh my God. Renee, no one has read my journals. I have a pact with my college roommate that whichever one of us dies first, the other one has to drive there and burn the other person's journals. And you got to have that. You got to have a pact.
I know that's a fail safe.
Wait, Aaron, you don't have journals, right? It's for Trevor. Is anyone?
Oh no, so I don't really keep journals. Okay. These are more like workbooks. As a writer, to get
to know him better.
Yeah, I like to just put my energy into the narrative. I mean, if you read the Trevor books, obviously it's not me, but he is a composite. Parts of me, parts of other officers, who I encountered while in the academy. He's a little bit of everything. And that's usually where I start. I think that helps them feel more human too, is if I actually, even the other characters are I won't say based on people, but the bones are of people, I've encountered.
Yeah. And I want to say too, that I was so happy when Trevor, I just was having this conversation with someone earlier today. I was so happy to see a strong male character, a tough guy, going to therapy on the page, because I really feel like we need to be talking more about everyone going to therapy. I go to therapy, and we need to see more men going to therapy. And
Yeah.
I know that that's even, therapy and mental health are just so stigmatized. And the only way to deal with that is to put it out, bring it out into the light. So I was so happy to see the topic of therapy raised, and to see a strong male tough guy detective turned PI going to therapy. And I'm so glad. I meant to say that I'm so happy that you brought that to light. So thank you so much for doing that, and congratulations on book 4.
Oh,
Yes,
thank you.
absolutely. When I say yes, this is so important. This is a topic we need to be talking about, and the only way we're going to normalize it is if we see it all the time. So
Yeah.
thank you, Erin, for opening that
Especially
conversation.
in crime writing,
Yes.
it's always odd to me, when sometimes there'll be a character who does some incredible stuff, like, has to kill people and, survive explosions. And then the next scene, they're getting a milkshake. And I think to myself, like, in reality, that would have some sort of impact, right? We would see that on the
Yes.
page.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Or like I interviewed a Navy SEAL sniper for the Navy SEAls. That guy, there's no way you spend your life sniping and then, snipering, and then not need therapy. And his best friend, they were on a mission to Syria. His best friend, this is his actual life before he started writing thrillers, was shot and killed. And I said to him, how are you dealing with that? Like, are you going to therapy? And he was like, yes. And I'm practicing meditation and mindfulness. It's like, okay, let's talk about this,
Yeah,
So,
when you talk to these real people, what I
they're
mean,
doing therapy, right?
these are human beings who, still have to continue, right? So like we read a
Yes.
book and then the book is over and
Yeah.
that's a nice story, right? But we don't think in terms of, I wonder what happens to that character after that, we think, we were entertained. But my approach has always been to think about it like, well, what happens to Trevor after, the end, right? Like where does he go? What does he do? How does he ensure that he remains healthy, after experiencing some really rough things? And so,
Yes.
Realistically, when people say, hey, I want to write about cops or I want to write about military, I would say go talk to them. Go talk to them, because if you sit down and your diet of all of that is based on movies and things like that and TV, it's so far from reality. And I tell my students that all the time. I say, look, go talk, do a ride along, go talk to them, talk to retired too, because retired have a completely different frame of reference where they're no longer doing the job.
Exactly. Thank you guys all so much. Last question from Renee. Do you think Trevor will visit you ever again after you finish writing book 4?
Maybe. I mean, the universe of Trevor.
I'm predicting it.
It's possible. It's possible. I mean, the universe of Trevor will still exist. So that means that, just because I'm not necessarily writing about Trevor doesn't mean I won't write about his father, Shaun. And, I would love to explore how he was policing in the 80s and into the 90s. And Trevor would obviously be there as a kid. But I'm very interested in kind of exploring 1980s Los Angeles because I think that was a huge turning point in the city, especially for the relationship of law enforcement and the citizens and a lot of the things that happened in the 80s.
Exactly. Oh, maybe you'll cross paths with Easy Rawlings. Oh my God, that would be so cool.
That would be fun. If Walter wants to do that.
Oh my God, he runs into Easy. Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah, if Walter gave me permission for that would be wonderful.
Well, Wally Lamb, I just interviewed Wally Lamb, and his character is reading a Walter Mosley book.
Oh, how fun. That was cool.
And I was like, oh, this is so, I love, when worlds cross paths.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, we're over time. Time flies when you're having this much fun. Erin, thank you so much for coming on to give us the inside scoop
Oh, thank
on
you.
The Bluest Night out now. And Mavens, thank you for joining me, spending your Monday with me, your Mystery Monday. I hope your week is off to a killer start. May the days and the pages fly by. Aaron, you're coming back when book 4 is out. Y'all stay tuned for the TV show with 50 Cent and for Trevor Finnegan, book 4 out next fall. Aaron will be back with us then. Aaron, I'm going to hold you to it.
Oh, definitely.
Y'all have a great rest of your night, great rest of your week, and a great holiday season. And I will see you next Mystery Monday with Ryan Steck and Simon Gervais. Stay tuned. I'll see you then.